Marlon Williams, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Jack.
Hoki mai. Welcome to the studio. Te whare Tīwekaweka. That means the messy house, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, Tīwekaweka. Oh, yeah. The messy house. Yeah, it's sort of I suppose on one level it's a sort of a metaphor for the pains and chaos of creation, and the how creation comes out of disorder, and you have a house full of ideas, and you sort of sit quietly and let them talk to each other, and then hopefully they form some sort of cohesive thing.
Okay, explain that to us more. What do you mean? It's a metaphor. So you're feeling like things were a bit scrambled, and this has been a process of clarifying, maybe.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the fact you've got to let the chaos sit for a while, and not try and impose too much will on them, on things before they've had a time to speak to each other and sort of arrange themselves.
Okay. What is striking to many about the album is this is your first full album entirely in Te Reo Māori. Tell us about that decision.
Yeah, well, it's been around in my head for a while, the idea of doing it. I grew up speaking a little bit. I went to Kohanga Reo, but it all sort of drifted away from me again as I moved on into my childhood, into primary school. But I was always singing in Māori, and it's just such a beautiful sung language. So I always knew at some point that I was going to come back around and give myself an excuse to be able to sing in Te Reo. 2019 came along, and I sort of was in between writing records, and the first song came to me, which was Awa Atura, which is the first single. And I brought in a collaborator, and a fellow Little Tonian, a rapper and Te Reo Māori teacher named Tame. And so they helped me very graciously to put the album together. And then we just sort of wrote over the next few years, and then recorded at the end of 2023, and now we're releasing.
So if you compare where your Māori's at today with where it was in, say, 2018 or start 2019, like, do you feel like you've got a more intimate relationship with the reo? Or?
Yeah, it's getting there. It's a very humbling process.
It's so there are a few things more humbling than learning a language, but I can imagine as someone with Māori whakapapa, like it takes on another kind of level, right?
Yeah, there's lots of layers going on there, but it's I've still got a long way to go on the journey. But writing in the language and working with a proficient collaborator was it was a really nice step along the way.
You said that you grew up singing in Māori a lot. So in what context was that?
There was that every year we'd have the kaitahu huiato, which would be at various marae around the takiwā down there, and every year Mum and I would get in her old Volvo and cram learn all the songs that were going to be sung, which were beautiful waiata from down there. There's songs by the Croft sisters and other great composers that have come out of kaitahu. So that was always there as at least in musical form.
And so how would you learn it? She would just teach you?
There were tapes. There were cassette tapes that we'd play in the car, and God, we're getting old.
No, that's amazing.
But yeah, so it was great. It was just it would take a good, sometimes the marae would be 5 hours away, so we'd have 5 hours to just play it over and over.
Yeah, I was going to say if you're in like Ōtautahi in Christchurch and you got to go to Ōnuku, it's only like an hour or so. Then that's going to be tricky.
That's stressful. Yeah. We might actually have to prep.
Yeah. Stop in Little River for a couple of hours on the way. Yeah, isn't that amazing how you can reflect on things like that, and it. I don't know how you felt about it at the time, but it turns out to be quite a foundational thing in your life. The kind of in the moment you don't think I'm learning anything here. You don't think that this is something that's necessarily super meaningful or matters that much in my life. But then you look back on it after 20 or 30 years and you go, oh my God, actually that was quite significant.
Well, I think that's the directness of music too. It's music's just there, and it's compelling, and it draws you in. So it was just, and obviously I was very very into music as a child, so it took me on, and it never, I've been singing those songs at least in my head ever since, for sure.
Is your mum a good singer?
Yeah, she's a great singer. Yeah, she's got a lovely soprano.
Oh, that's nice. So leading up to, say, 2019, because you've said this album's taken about 5 years to kind of organise, it struck me that you were like living the kind of international jet setter life. In a good way. I mean, you were traveling the world, experiencing all these different cities and cultures and playing in all sorts of amazing places and stuff. Why do you think that process has ultimately ended up with you really focusing on your place here?
I think it's a few reasons. I think it was a general desire to be home. And obviously COVID came in the middle of that and sort of further consolidated that feeling. And I think it's just been there as a sort of yawning chasm in my I guess in some sense of my self-knowledge, So it just felt inevitable. I didn't know when it was going to happen, but it just felt like all things considered that that was the right time to do it.
Yeah. So it was going to happen at some point, and you felt like you kind of owed it to yourself at some point, but you needed to actually get there.
And it was just, as I say, it's just another excuse to be able to hang out at home and just spend time in this beautiful country.
Yeah. There's, I don't know who it was like T.E. Lawrence or someone had this like phrase about traveling, or quote about traveling that I always liked. It's a bit cheesy, but it definitely rings true in my experience. And it was that the more a man travels, the more he learns about his own home. Like the more perspective you get on the world and different cultures and places and all of that. The one place you learn the most about is home, because you're able to contextualize everything a bit more.
Totally. That's bang on. I definitely felt that. And I also think conversely, you've got to go away to appreciate it, to be able to contextualize it. I don't think I think it's no use telling a disgruntled teenager that they live in the best place in the world and that there's no point in them traveling, because that's a lie. But it's also true that they'll more often than not they'll fall back in love with home again.
Yeah. And that was your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've always loved it here, but it definitely it crystallized from all those years of traveling.
You mentioned O Atura, and when I listened to it, the first single from the album, it just sounded so much like the kind of 60s show band stuff. And then I saw afterwards that that's exactly what had kind of inspired that sound. So have you been listening to a lot of that kind of music?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on Elvis and the Platters and all those, and then Howard Morrison Quartet more locally, people like that. So yeah, that's always been there in my in my listening habits. And I think, Māori as a language, like the pure phonetics of it, just lend themselves so beautifully to that style of singing. And I think there's a sort of there's a correlation globally with indigenous cultures and crooners. I've found. I think there's lots of there's a real big crooning scene over in Australia. I've always noticed that there's people from indigenous cultures tend to love to warble.
That's interesting. What do you think that is?
I don't know. It's something in there's some sort of alignment of passion, I guess. But it's, I don't know, for me it's a happy marriage, because I love that stuff. Okay,
just thinking off the top of my head, could it be that a lot of indigenous cultures aren't driven by the same kind of like urgency of modern life, like we're so always in a rush for everything, and I feel like indigenous cultures, even the way that we think about like Te Ao Māori, kind of contextualizes everything in over longer time spans. And I wonder if being able to sing slowly kind of reflects that. Maybe I'm thinking too deep.
No, I mean, that's good. Let's get into ethnomusicology.
Yeah, please. or just simply that a lot of indigenous languages are more poetic.
I think maybe there's a sense of romance, and a sort of like a version of or a vision of beauty, as it's in terms of singing that just closely aligns, and a love for nice things, for pretty things, you know.
You see, Australia's got a big crooning scene. What does a big crooning scene look like?
Oh, you just go into some of those remote Aboriginal communities, and if there's a karaoke machine, then, you know, I think it's from my experience, people over there are singing Freddie Fender in the same way that they are.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It's like that hearty, wrought, passionate singing.
Yeah. Okay, so this is an album. It's a doco. Yeah? It's a tour as well. Talk us through the touring process, because, I mean, you were playing some diverse places from Moiraki to New York, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different people I want to be able to perform in front of, and yeah, I'm really curious to, you know, it's all music when you put it out and you perform it in different places. The songs shift depending on the context of, you know, where you're playing, and certainly going to be true of this record. I think, you know, it's obviously playing to a bunch of my whānau in Moiraki is going to be different to playing in a bar in Lower East Side. Yeah. So yeah, I'm always fascinated to find out how things resonate differently in different spaces, and then with this example, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. How do you anticipate an album entitled in Te Reo Māori is going to translate to New York or LA or London? I think
we're, you know, as a world, we're becoming more used to not needing to understand everything literally all the time, you know. And I think which is a very positive thing, and just as well, because it's, you know, everyone's knowledge of the world is expanding at a terrifying rate, so there's just so much information to take in. But I think people, my experience is people generally are more and more receptive to hearing things in other languages. Yeah.
Finally, then, if this album has been a process of kind of organising your own place and identity in your own mind, at the very least, what has changed over the last 5 years about the way you kind of see yourself?
Oh, it's a big question. I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. Things change so quickly for me. I definitely struggle with trying to like work out my my identity over time, my diachronic identity. You know, it's like I honestly couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you who I was yesterday.
Do you feel like you've kind of reached a conclusion though? If it was Te Whare Tīwekaweka to start with, is it any less Tīwekaweka today?
No, I think there is for pragmatic purposes. You know, I've got to present something to the world, and you know, but nothing's ever finished. I think it's pretty natural to sort of get to the end of a project and be healthily dissatisfied, you know, and just because it spurns you on to find the next spark of things.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the album. I really hope you enjoy the touring experience, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Cheers.